Welcome everyone to today's Lunch and Learn. I'm just letting people in. Hi Jeff, how are you?
Good, Lupe. How are you?
I'm good too. Nice to see you again. And then Jeff here, he attends majority of our Lunch and Learn, so he's here every Wednesday. It's always nice to see him. And I'm just going to wait a couple minutes before we get started, just to let people in, anyone who's trickling in, and then I'll go over a couple Zoom rules and we'll get started with today's presenter. So for anyone who's new, we have a couple Zoom rules. Please mute yourself when you're not speaking. We do recommend speaker view for presentation, and then video sharing is optional, although we like seeing everyone's smiling faces. And please type any questions or comments into the chat. We like seeing that interaction with our speaker. We'll have a short Q&A at the end. So if you want to wait till then to ask your question, you're more than welcome to do so. If you're not comfortable asking your question, you could type it into the chat and I could ask the question myself. And then here are a couple updates for anyone who's new. We have 19 programs, 13 of them are in person, 3 are hybrid, and 3 are virtual. We have 6 upcoming events in February. This is a short month, but check all of our social media as we announce new events all the time. For this week, we have a few events happening. We have a USC women's basketball home game tomorrow night at 6 p.m. This is a special home game. They will recognize Autism Tree during the halftime for the partnership that we've had with the USC athletic program for the past 15 years. So if you can make it, we highly recommend attending. We would like to see everyone there. We're having an adaptive workshop on Saturday morning at 10 a.m. at the La Jolla Library. We're having our adaptive dance class for ages 11 through 18 at 12 p.m. on Saturday at the Tap Fever Studios. And we're having our first Autism Tree Project Sunshine teleplay workshop happening on Saturday, February 25th at 11 a.m. It's ages 5 and up. And then we're having our USC men's basketball home game happening on Saturday, February 25th at 7 p.m. This will be the last basketball game happening for this season. So if you can make it, highly recommend as well. And then we're having a USC baseball home game on Sunday, February 26th at 1 p.m. And then for this one, we'll pair each kid that attends with the baseball players so they could interact with them after the game. And then up to date, we have 491 impact videos on our YouTube channel. So subscribe today. We love all of our subscribers. We have 330, so whew. And then we have 109 Lunch and Learns uploaded in our YouTube channel. If you want to go watch any of the past ones, we have some pretty good ones. Lately we've had people from Regional Center and oh, I'm blanking now. But yeah, we have a lot of good Lunch and Learns in there. And then the one with Edwin will be there by the end of this week. And then I will pass it on to today's Lunch and Learn speaker, Edwin Tsai. He is the Director of ABA Operations at Health Pro Pediatrics. So Edwin, take it away.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining me today. And I'm really excited to talk with you, just explain a little bit more about myself and also with, how ABA has been really beneficial and how our clinic ourselves have been trying to really approach treatment for our kiddos that, really require that support. So I'm going to share. Let's see. Okay. So a little bit about myself. I've been working in the field of autism and ABA for my whole career, basically. I got really interested in child development and working with, different ABA agencies throughout my life. I've been doing this ever since college, worked as a behavioral therapist, as an RBT, was able to take a stint and work as a service coordinator at the regional center for 5 years, then came back to get my degree and pursue my BCBA, and also was lucky enough to become a clinical director for 6 years after that. So I've been able, I would say pretty blessed to experience working in ABA in so many different ways to really get a good idea of kind of where this field is and where it's going. But more importantly, onto how families, pretty much access ABA and how the different barriers that they experience can really hinder their way of helping their children, because there's so many different things you have to do, so many requirements, and so many, especially when insurances have taken over and started becoming able to fund it. So it has been very difficult for a lot of families to access ABA and to get a good experience with it. So, my main focus is to really make sure that the families themselves have the easy time to, get these services, but also to have a good time with these services. There's a lot of, myths around ABA that's been going around, and, not a lot of negative press with ABA, especially with how we used to perform things back in the day. But there's so much more advancements in ethics and how we want to pursue treatment for our kiddos to make it more child focused and making sure that the families get the best that they need. So when we look at treatment for a child, we don't look at just one aspect. Most of sometimes you have a multitude of different services going on, many different providers that are really trying to tell you one thing or another thing. You should do this, you should do that. And it's so confusing for families to find out which one is the best for your child. And honestly, it's whatever the child adapts to the most. I've been talking to different BCBAs or different agencies, and they'll tell you ABA is the best, ABA is going to do this for you, and yes, we have been proven and shown to have significant improvements in the child with the child and their skills, but that should not be in light of other services that you may provide. So really, how do we look at a child-centered plan and making sure we know what the child is doing and is it really benefiting them? And so really with ABA is that we try to supplement a lot of that support and teaching them those skills in order so they can access more services for them later. For example, if a child has difficulty sustaining attention, and will engage in a lot of running away or tantrum behaviors when they're trying to sit and focus, we'll work on those so that maybe they can have a better session during speech therapy or occupational therapy, or maybe they could generalize to school. So we try to center these things in order so that the child can then access those services a lot better. And with that, we try to focus on social significance skills, things that really help them in their environment. A lot of this involves communication. Sometimes our kiddos have trouble, verbalizing what they want or even understanding what they want. They may be feeling anger or anxiety, or they're feeling these things that upset them, but they don't know how to deal with it or how to regulate those emotions or be able to understand what that is in certain contexts and social environments. So we try to focus our efforts onto providing that ability for those kiddos to be able to better utilize those skills and teach them the things they need to learn in order to express what they need. Now, I really don't want to say that we're teaching them robotically what to do, but really try to focus on what is it that in the child environment can get them what they need faster, but then also teach tolerance, teach them how to be flexible. One of the main things about autism is those behavior rigidities and those patterns of behaviors that we see that they have hard time to adjust to. And we try to help them be more flexible in those schedules, but also to help them understand what's expected, because these kiddos, they learn a little differently than maybe you and I have grown up to learn, or maybe their peers are learning. So we have to find out what they can do and then meet them on their level first before we start to move them toward skill building. So with that, we really try to make sure the goals and the treatment plans and everything we do is significant for the child and it's doable for the child. And then we try to make sure that we promote that and practice that day in and day out with them. Next, we really want to look at parent education, parent training. Now, this is an area that's really hard in any therapy because obviously families are there for help, but obviously too, you don't have that time to dedicate to practice these things a lot. There's a lot of stuff going on in the family's lives. For example, you may have multiple children. You have to take care of them. You have to maintain a household. You have to do work obligations or other obligations they need to do. So, there's a lot of pressure on families to you have to adhere to these intervention plans. You have to adhere to these treatment goals and everything. And it almost feel like it's like a threatening type of conversations. If you don't do this, this will happen. But really, we want to make sure that there's more empathy there. We empathize with our families. We know that it's hard and it's difficult and every day is a challenge because new things happen all the time. So we want to make sure that we do things in a way where it's more relatable and more available for the family to do, because the way we try to frame things in the sense of behaviorism is to show that maybe it's just understanding what your child is going through is enough. Maybe understanding this is a difficult thing and how do we get them through it, and then later on teach them what the more appropriate thing is to do. But that's not to say we're changing how parenting style is. We're not saying that parents aren't doing a good job and that all the stuff that you've been trying to do isn't working, but really it's guiding, really trying to adjust where you're at. Most of the parents I work with, they have some really great ideas and they've been doing some really good things that I probably wouldn't have thought of, but really just tweaking it. Kiddos change hour to hour sometimes, depending on their mood and what they've been doing. So really helping the families adjust to it and not get frustrated when things don't work, because long-lasting behavior change, it takes a while. Some kids have other things going on that may hinder learning as well. So you have a lot of what we call comorbid diagnoses. So not just autism, but you have intellectual disability, you have ADHD, you have Down syndrome, you have so many other things that could be going on that might be undiagnosed, or things that just may hinder that learning process. So we just have to meet them where they need to be. And then we also want to just make sure that we're setting good expectations of what we're trying to do. Some families come to us and say, hey, we need to just get my kid to do everything like her peers are doing, which is, yes, great. That's the goal. That's what our ultimate goals are, our plans are. It might take a while to get there, and we're, sometimes we're with kids for several years. So, making sure we manage our expectations and not push our children to do more than they can handle at the moment, but also try to be, empathetic for them and show them that, hey, we can get there. We just have to see how far we can go and how much help they need. And lastly, just trying to make sure we teach self-advocacy. Our kiddos sometimes are, we work with a very vulnerable group of individuals, and self-advocacy is so important. So we want to make sure that their words and things mean something to them, and that we are trying to make sure that they can advocate for themselves and say they don't like something or they don't want to do something, or that they want to do something, and show them how to access that appropriately. So really want to make sure that, again, the treatment and the services that we provide to families is to help with that. The child operates on so many different levels, not just with individuals themselves, but in the social context with peers and teachers and friends and families. And they meet so many different people at that, it's hard for them to know what to do all the time, and plus a lot of times they're young, 2-3-year-olds, they're still learning anyway. But also too, going into teenage years, even adulthood, they still need that guidance and help because, as you get older, those interactions become more complicated and become more nuanced. And how do we then target those different behaviors so that we can help them, and make sure, but again, not change who they are. These children and these individuals with autism, they are their own people. We're not trying to make them who they aren't, but we're trying to help them use these things to be who they are the best way. And so that everybody else can help understand how to then understand them. So that's really the focus, and making sure that our kiddos are getting that and that they can be their own person, have their own interest, and really for them. But at the same time, helping families help guide them and teach them things as you would know or teach any other child growing up, and be able to take that into consideration. And really looking how to empower parents, for a lot of times these, when you come to ABA, a lot of families I meet, whether it be their first time with an agency or their sixth time with an agency, they sometimes have come in with a lot of questions and and not really knowing what to do, or concerns about regression, or concerns about what will happen to my kiddo, 2 years from now, 4 years from now, 10 years from now. Like, I don't want them to fall behind. I don't want to do these things. And then just because, that's always every parent's worry. So, I want to make sure that, the families who come in, is they understand that they have an active role in their child's learning all the time. And that might not seem so. Sometimes you feel like you're trying to teach them one thing and they don't get it, or they're not learning. And then, or if they engage in some intense, behavior that can cause, maybe like self-injury behavior, running away, or they're not attending at all. So there are a lot of these things that can discourage families. But we all do ABA every day in our lives, and I think that's a very big thing. If you are, seeing what motivates a kid, and you're seeing things that you want to see, and you're actively giving feedback, and you're praising them, and you're providing them, with access to reinforcement, such as, their favorite movies, or you're enriching their environment with toys and things like that, you're doing ABA already. But our job is to really help you focus that learning, and focus that teaching, to help then go through these barriers that the kiddos might have. So such as those low attending skills, or those low, maybe they lack, vocal or verbal behaviors, and they're not able to tell you. So we have to find ways to do that, and in conjunction with anything else that they're doing. So, this goes with what they're doing in school, what they're doing in other services such as speech, OT, physical therapy. We are we try to maintain a holistic approach where, all of these things work together and not against each other. So families are at the center of all this. You guys are the main, natural teachers for the children, and that's where we want to get to. A lot of times, we come in and, we get so many hours with these kiddos, and we get to, practice and play and really provide really direct teaching. But eventually, families need to also be able to take on that role as well, but maybe not to that intensity, but hopefully that we can get the child to learn, or teach them how to learn, so that they can then learn from their natural teachers, which is, again, you guys, or their school teachers, or relatives, anybody that can interact with them, that they'll be able to follow and understand what they're asking them. But also mainly it's education. Sometimes we don't know why, a lot of parents don't know why these things happen. They don't maybe understand the diagnosis very well, or they don't understand, how come they're not doing what these other kids are doing, how come they're doing something different. And really, just for us, it's education. Every kid's different in any way, regardless of having an autism diagnosis or being neurotypical. Everybody has their things, and we try to make sure we understand why they're doing these certain things, and if they're appropriate or not, whether age appropriate, or if it's something that they could enjoy, making sure that we address what those are. And looking at these different functions help with that. We can always look at why certain things come about, and then identifying what to do next. And that's really great for families, because then they now can feel like they can do something. I think a lot of families I talk to when I start parent education and parent training sessions, is that they kind of throw their hands up, like, I don't know what to do. I'm completely lost. I tried every single thing I can. I've read the books, I've taught, I've done this, I've done that, and I still nothing. And sometimes it just takes a little bit of time, and consistency. We're not going to always, things aren't always going to work the first day, right? But it may take a week, 2 weeks for the kiddo to understand what's happening. So being able to understand our children better helps as well, and kind of gives us that grace of trying to input these types of teachings together so that give us some time and trust to process that these things will change over time. But if it doesn't, we know when it doesn't, and what's fantastic about ABA is that we'll have all the data in the world to show you that, hey, he's progressing and they're not progressing, where are they going? And you can see that in a very, literal sense. And then we change things from there and we say, okay, this hasn't been working out, let's try something different. And we're always trying to find out what the best thing is for that child, because what can work one day can not work another day. And we're always constantly being flexible. So it's about giving you guys that patience and also that ability to look and say, hey, I can do something today or do something tomorrow, or think about, okay, this didn't work, so I guess what, tomorrow I'm gonna do something different, and then maybe that will work. And it is a challenge, and it'll always be a challenge. And I think with raising children and trying to make sure that they get all the things they need, it's always going to be something new to do, and something something that we're going to always have to struggle with. But having the support with the therapists there, the RBTs and your BCVAs, they can at least help identify what is the best and more efficient way to help these children to get what they need, and to then have them, participate in their environments and gain access to those like social events. And you can take them out to like different outings, and not worry about whether or not behavior is going to occur, or whether they're not going to play with other children. So we can always definitely work on those things so that you guys have that assurance that they will be able to do that. So again, as I spoke before, I really, what we try to do, and what I really try to emphasize is to dispel a lot of the myths, again, that are around ABA, again, the things that maybe families have, come to understand ABA as. And sometimes when I go out and I meet different people, ABA sometimes is like it kind of hits a sore spot, with a lot of times. And I really don't think that's a thing that we can, really go forward with, because, yes, there are practitioner things that people do that may not be the right way to do it, or maybe isn't like the most appropriate way to do things. And I think that happens a lot in different types of fields. But ABA really, we try to make sure, again, that we're not doing things where it becomes a trauma for the child, a trauma for the families. I think there's different things that we think about. For example, you're teaching my kid to be a robot. You're trying to teach them how to talk about rote sentences and things like that. And really, what we're not trying to do, we're trying to make sure that they have the skills, and they say, hey, this is how you ask for things. Sometimes they do echo and they sound like we're like parroting us, which does happen. But we try to then, at least the skill is there, and then we try to make it blend it with other things so that it becomes a little more natural. But this is all those things are made to do, are to help reduce any other problem behavior that we see. Other myths that we see are like, we sit and we force kids to do stuff that they don't want to do, like over compliant behaviors, forcing children to sit at a desk for 3-4 hours and do work. And if they don't do that, we just constantly push. And that's definitely something that, that may have been, sought and done before in the past, but definitely is not what we try to do now. A lot of our therapies are play-based. We try to find things motivating for the kids, and sometimes, again, when motivating for children, it's just play, having fun. Children learn best when they're having fun, because then they don't need to set up a reinforcer like using foods or using like token systems and things like that. We can just have fun, and they'll learn naturally because they're wanting to listen to you now. They're like, and they want to engage. So, we're not really here to force a child to do anything they don't want to do. There's a lot of things, what we call a sense-based therapy, is that we look for a sense from our kiddos. Sometimes they can't tell you that they don't want to do it, right? They'll say maybe they'll kick or scream or run away sometimes to show you they don't want to do that. But we will never force a child to do something they don't want to do. And we'll never force a family to do something they don't want to do. We are here to work as a team and to find out what will increase his child learning through positive interactions and enriching their environment by providing opportunities for play and to have fun. So definitely that's something we want to make sure we're not trying to promote. Also too, again, one myth too as well is that we're the end all be all to all therapies, that every other therapy is not important, ABA is important. And again, that is not true. Every therapy has value to that child. We all work on different things, even though sometimes they all look the same because they're, most of them are kids, and then we all work on talking and, communicating and play and things like that, which is in the outside, it does look kind of similar, but we all do in a different way. Speech has their practices and their exercises they do. Occupational therapy has their focuses on different things, and ABA as well. So really, again, it's a holistic approach now, and I think that a lot of different practitioners are already moving toward this, which is wonderful. But definitely at Health Pro, we emphasize them as much. ABA gets authorized a lot of hours to be there. We could be there every single day for 2 to 3 hours a day, and that's a lot. And that might get away with other things, which OT or speech may have 30 minutes a week or 1 hour a week. And so sometimes families get, or agencies tell them to say, hey, you have to drop speech so you can keep ABA, and that, you feel torn between things. But really, that's not what we're trying to, put forth on you guys. We're really trying to make sure they say, hey, do you have speech? Go to speech, and we'll collaborate with them. And we'll make sure we talk to them. They say, hey, what are you guys working on? ABA is just a very small part in any child's whole medical plan, with their doctors and teachers and other specialists that you may see, neurologists, everybody has a role. But if we start to isolate ourselves and don't talk to each other, then that's only hindrance on the family and hindrance on the kid's development. So really we emphasize the ability to talk to each other and to be a team and to make sure that whatever the child's, important needs are, we're focusing on that. And then making sure that it's for the well-being for the child, and ultimately as a parent, you guys have that advocacy for them, to say, hey, what are we doing here? What's going on, and making sure that you guys are well versed on, what type of things are happening in those services to make sure that you're comfortable with. So definitely our therapies, treatment consent is super important. We don't do things in sessions or in ABA that families don't consent to already. We explain and we make sure they are comfortable with things, but definitely, there are times where you're observing a session or something, and you see something you don't like, and that works, that happens because maybe on paper when we discuss it, it seems all makes sense, but then once you see it in session, you don't feel comfortable. We have every right to stop, every right to say, no, hey, let's try something different, let's do something different. It's okay, and we're here to troubleshoot, and because we want to make sure we're focusing on the right things, and ourselves not being very rigid on what we are doing, but definitely teamwork and understanding the families is what we want to do best. So in the end, what we really want, and what I really want to try to focus on and really try to dispel a lot of families is just trying to show them that ABA can be a great asset and a really awesome thing to have, and to really help with any type of learning, not just with kids with autism, but these are practices and things that we do every day with people we know, the people we address and talk to. And to have this understanding kind of gives us a better way of really, understanding each other better, understanding our children better, just so that we don't have that frustration sometimes too. And especially with families going through the system with like regional center assurances, those have been such a pain point, with families. How do we get through these things? And what I enjoy mostly is to get families through that. I worked in both systems before, so I understand where the issues are and how to get past them and how to work around those things. I've helped lots of families to navigate, what to do, who to call, where to ask for, and make sure we follow up with them and not get lost and things fall through the cracks. And that's a really important part, just to get these services going. Because once you get them going, then you're able to move forward. And also too, ABA isn't always a one-time thing. You can, therapies can be episodic. Sometimes with families, they get ABA very young ages, 2-3 years old. And then we set to graduate because kids have been doing better, but they don't want to graduate because they worry, oh my God, if you go, what's going to happen? And where are we going to go? Like, is ABA going to be done forever? But as long as there's a need and also you fall under the certain requirements for funders, we can still provide it. Most funders will be all the way up until 21, 22 years of age. As long as there's some type of need or documentation that says, hey, we're still struggling with this, that the diagnosis is still there, ABA can still come back and we can still provide those things, barring another assessment and just kind of seeing where the child's at. But I've worked with kids that were young and they were like 3 or 4 and they came back later on. That happens sometimes because, again, as I said before, that their world changes a lot when they get older, and then their challenges become different, and so families aren't quite prepared for that because they're used to dealing with and working with a younger child. Now they're older, like, okay, I got to refocus again, and sometimes it takes just another another time with ABA, and then we're like, okay, we can kind of see how it's going. But what's wonderful about ABA is that it's across lifespans. We work with multiple, like, at all ages. I've worked with as young as 2 years old and all the way up as old as 60 years old. So we can definitely work and adapt to each age level and whatever they're at. It just looks a little different, and what appropriateness to do. So what may look like a visual schedule for a 3 or 4-year-old can look like a planner for a 20-year-old or 21-year-old. I look at my calendar every day to figure out what I do, or I'll forget. So I use visual schedules every day, and that's totally fine. So really just making sure we adapt to what's appropriate for that person and that individual at the time. So yeah, that's pretty much what I have today.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. I know Jeff said if anyone's interested in learning more about ABA, my friend and colleague Michelle Vinogrove, I'm sorry if I...
Benakurov.
There you go. Thank you. Is a behavior analyst based out of Florida who runs her own blog called The World of Autism. Thank you, Jeff, for sharing. Are there any questions for Edwin regarding his presentation? I know you kind of touched on this earlier, but like if you're a new parent, just new to the autism diagnosis, how do you recommend in going about like choosing the best service for like ABA, OT, speech? Is there a way, because I know like that process could be kind of tough getting like insurance and stuff. Is there something that you recommend parents doing?
Yeah, definitely. So if you have the diagnosis already and you have that there, usually how insurances recommend services for different service lines may be a little different. So ABA, in more focusedly, is generally they have a list of agencies that are in your area, and depending on your insurance plan, how they choose that, I would work very closely with your care coordinator that usually does that. Most insurances have some type of coordinator or case manager that primarily handle all ABA requests, and to be able to kind of work with them to find where they feel is like the best one. Because sometimes with insurance plans, they have certain ones that are like, oh yeah, I have really good experiences with this. Families have expressed that they are happy here, or maybe they'll simply, as I haven't gotten a lot of requests to be removed from this agency, so maybe they want to stay there. So definitely work with that. Other than that, definitely the autism community is pretty tight knit. I think there's a lot of people who have different experiences with their different agencies, and that could be it could be kind of a mixed bag at that point. And I understand there's a lot of it's hard to get things started with agency just to find out that it wasn't what you expected. So I would always recommend calling an agency, viewing what they're doing. If you could do a site visit, really have an idea of what your general concerns are and what you want and what you're been trying to work on, especially if you had services before. And then just kind of seeing how those clinics are and what their values are. And really asking those questions about what they want to concentrate on, what are they doing there. Then whatever you feel is the most comfortable, or aligns to what you're doing, then I think that's best. I think, and I would always try to make sure that you do some type of meet and greet with a few agencies, try to get some word of mouth type ones as well, but definitely working with your care manager with your plans also help too.
right, thank you. Another question that I have, do you have any tips for parents? I know earlier you mentioned that, our kids sometimes have difficulty with expressing what they want or how they feel. Do you have any tips for parents who are going through the same things? Anything that they could use?
Yeah. So, a lot of times when we're trying to, especially when we get new kids coming in and they're, we look at like, what are they doing first, So if a child is wanting something or needing something, we simply observe, what are they doing to get what they want? Are they pulling on you? Are they screaming or crying? Are they pointing at something and then you're giving it to them and they're still crying? What's going on? So we have to identify what it is that they want. And then really in the beginning, how we usually work it is that we try to give in to them when they appropriately ask for it or point to it or gesture something or have something that's not a tantrum or something that's not, aggression or running away or any of those more intense behaviors. Because for them, that's what we call a knee-jerk reaction. When I don't get something, then I'm going to do that right away. Because usually what happens is that everybody starts to stop and move around them because now everybody's focusing on the child and trying to get where they want or trying to figure that out. So, trying to make sure that you help them by doing something simple. Like sometimes you don't expect them to say a full sentence, right? Or say 4 or 5 words to get what they want. Maybe a one word can't work, or maybe again, simple gesture would work. Get them to do something that's easy. That way you learn that this is the right way. And then from there, you start teaching them more complex ways of asking because they're already stopping and learning how to ask for it in that sense. So then you can start asking them to echo you to say, hey, I want this or I want that. But then also then too, I think a lot of times families run into like a tolerance issue, like they can't have that right now, or they can't have it at this moment, or kids don't have that ability to wait for something. So you got to make sure that, when that happens is to teach them how to wait in a short amount of time and build that tolerance and slowly increase how long you are waiting for. So then the kiddo knows that's going to happen eventually. And that's really what we're teaching them, that it's going to happen at some point. But sometimes for our kiddos, like it doesn't happen now, then it's like it's game over for them. It's like they just have a full meltdown or things like that will happen. But then we have to teach them over and over and over again. And really it's practice and intentful practice. Don't wait for until the kiddo really needs something and then try to practice at that moment. Try to contrive opportunities on every day to try to do that. So don't wait for the child to really want something and then ask them, because at that point they're probably already at that threshold of wanting to break down and melt down. So try to find times where they're doing great and then offer them choices and practice them talking or moving or doing something to request things. So then they're more accepted to it. They're more receptive to prompting and more receptive to you showing them what they want. So usually that repetition helps a lot, and just providing practice outside of those moments where they are really needing something.
Well, thank you. Is there anyone that has any questions for Edwin? You could type it in the chat or raise your hand or just unmute yourself. I know you mentioned like towards the end something about set-based therapy. I'm not sure if I heard that correctly, but could you just elaborate a bit on that?
Yes, yeah. Sense-based therapy, so that kind of goes along with sometimes with our kiddos, we kind of push and do over compliance type things, right? And this will usually fall into like follow through, right? If I do something and then they don't listen to me or they do something different, I have to go in and prompt them and make them come. So sometimes with that, kiddos are showing you that they don't want to do this, right? And that comes a lot of like it feels like it's punishing for the child, and they don't get what you want at a session because they're crying or they're upset. So a sense-based therapy is identifying what behaviors the kiddo is doing, showing you that they don't like that, because they can't vocalize that to you sometimes. They can't say, I don't want to do this. So by forcing that upon them, they get again, this is where the trauma happens. Like, oh, I was just forced to do stuff. So by identifying the behavior that's showing us like, yeah, when they do this, they're not liking that, we have to be able to stop and say, hey, okay, let's stop and let's not continue this because this is not getting, this is not providing the opportunity that we want. And then making sure the child is then back in, and then stopping that part, get him back engaged, and then retrying it again, but under different circumstances. Because so sometimes maybe they didn't comply or follow instructions because of certain things. So we have to go back and reevaluate what that was, and then try it a different way. So then we get the follow through because we maybe offered a different type of options for games, or we made sure we got attention first, or we have to identify those things. But we never push a child past where they don't want to do something, because again, now we're just forcing them to do it. And sometimes, like for a lot of times, for even practitioners or families, they feel I have to do that because I don't want them to think that they can get away with it or something. But it's not about that. It's about just showing them like, no, it's just they didn't understand what we wanted them to do. So let's just reset. Let's do it again, and try to get a different way, and then trying the best way to adjust that.
Okay, well, thank you for expanding on that. Karen Wright in the chat said, thank you for a wealth of information. You are a very inspiring speaker. Janice said, thank you, Edwin. And then Cindy said, thank you. That was very informative, Edwin. If anyone has any last minute questions, if not, we're going to end it off here and take our group photo before we end our lunch and learn, just a traditional photo of what we always take. And then I'm not quite sure who iPhone is, but they said thank you so much as well. So
thank you guys.
Edwin. And then if you are comfortable with sharing your camera, I'm just going to take a group screenshot of everyone here. So if you want to, thank you. It's nice seeing you.
It's okay if I leave my email in the chat in case if anybody has any questions or just concerns. Even if I just have, if you have just any question about how services go, anything, feel free to contact me. I am open to answering. I really like to advocate for families. I love to just help guide them, even if, again, you don't use us as a service agency. It's not really about that. It's really about helping you guys and getting through those first steps. And sometimes you just need someone to say, hey, is this right? Or is this, what else can you do? And giving options. So I could definitely leave my email there in the chat. If you ever have ask questions about anything, I could definitely help you out.
Yeah, most definitely. We send out a recap email on Friday with the link to the YouTube video of the Lunch and Learn, and then we'll add your information. And then Jeff said, nice job, Edwin. If you're interested, feel free to check out my website, Going the Distance. He has awesome blogs, so check it out. And he said that goes to anyone who's interested as well. And then thank you for your email. And then if it's okay for you to stop sharing your screen so I could take a screenshot, and then that'll be it for today. All right, everyone, thank you for sharing your cameras. Hi, Janice. Nice seeing you. All right, I'm gonna count us off, and then just 1, 2, 3. All right, 2 for good measure. Well, thank you, everyone, and I hope to see everyone sometime in the future in another Lunch and Learn. But thank you, Edwin, for today's Lunch and Learn, and see you guys next time.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, guys.